Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the North Carolina, and that's because this ship is available completely for free. Just by logging in, even if you haven't played in a while, this ship could be yours in port. And just a little taste of what it can do. 45,000 damage in on a Monarch there, or even a little bit more. Broadside on. This ship has immense punching power with these main guns. Perhaps you already got this ship. I'll be talking a little bit about the playstyle you're looking for here and situations where you need to be pushing, situations where you need to be playing a little bit more passive. But this ship is nice. This is a very, very nice battleship and definitely recommended if you're still on the fence which ship you want to get for tier 8. North Carolina is one of the better ones. If you're interested in battleships at all, if you haven't played battleships before, North Carolina is an excellent option just because it's such a vanilla battleship. It doesn't have any gimmick to really rely on or for you to exploit to really get the most out of it. It shows you basic standard battleship play and rewards you for it. And I think that's really, really good. That way you learn how to play battleship just as a baseline level, nothing fancy about it. And you can bring that over to maybe a more gimmick-heavy line, and you still have that solid foundation. I think that's a really good reason to go for the North Carolina, and especially go towards the Montana. That line, as well as the Yamato line, are my two first choices for new players. I think it's really good to get that baseline battleship skill set down. This ship is one that rewards you for patience as well, not shooting the mines right away. I am playing with DivMate here, in this case with Malta. Definitely go check out his channel as well. Great content creator for this game. But we're showcasing here North Carolina crossfires. You're really looking for opportunities where you're not sitting with all your battleships. You want to be a little bit spread out, forcing people to angle to one of you. And that way, they're going to be broadside to the other one. And North Carolina is going to do its best work in those situations. It also has great concealment, so when running a reasonably well-spec commander, you get a couple concealment stacks as well as the upgrade module. We get 12.3 kilometer detect. That's going to allow us to surprise people. A lot of the time, the best salvos you have while playing Battleship come down to surprising people. They don't know you're there, and you stayed dark and waited for that perfect shot. Dispersion will troll you, certainly. I had enough of that in the recording sessions for this video. You're going to see some amazing salvos, and you're going to see some where you're left scratching your head a little bit. How did that happen? But that's a part of playing battleships. And North Carolina generally does get solid dispersion. Not the best in the game, but solid. It's got very, very nice Sigma. And that's a real hidden mechanic that just basically comes down to how often or what is the tendency for the shells to go towards the center of where you aimed. The dispersion number in port is going to show you the horizontal dispersion. There's a hidden value for the vertical, and that draws the circle on the water, basically around where you click to actually shoot. And then the shells deal with Sigma. That's just the value that's going to tell you if the shells are more likely to go to the middle or not, and a higher number is better. So with 2.05, it's nearly the best at tier 8. We see a lot of ships, at least in the American line, with 1.9 Sigma. Iowa, Montana, the further tiers up from North Carolina have 1.9. So to have 2.05 means we're more often than not going to have very nice salvos. The problem with NC, though, is you don't have access to an accuracy upgrade module, and I think that is maybe why we're seeing some of these slightly wonkier salvos. On the American line, you actually don't have access to an accuracy upgrade slot until tier 9. Still getting some nice salvos, though, right? It's not every salvo, but most of them are pretty nuts, let's be honest here. We're going to push up to try and help Malta survive because they are just charging at him at the moment. So we're going to need to get those crossfires in. But the American upgrade in the 6th slot gives you 11% dispersion. The standard dispersion upgrade is 7%. So very, very nice, but only available at tier 9. So once you're through grinding NC, you'll get to the Iowa and have access to that. And it is very, very good. You'll notice these shells are a bit slow too. So when it comes to playing North Carolina, you do want to make use of its good concealment to get a little bit closer. Once you get to Iowa and Montana, the shell velocity increases, allowing you to more easily hit targets at longer ranges. North Carolina, I will be honest, I've played this ship a lot. I've played battleships a lot in this game, and I struggled a bit going back to this thing, trying to play it at these longer ranges. Some of these higher tier games, you get into tier 10 matches, you got to shoot 15, 18, 20 kilometer salvos, and it's difficult. It is very, very difficult. It's much better played in these scenarios. Not necessarily brawling, but certainly in that 10 to 15 kilometer range is where it's best, I think. But we're going to show off a weakness of North Carolina here as well. You do have to be careful. This is the standard battleship playstyle, I suppose. We're getting the crossfires. We're doing a great job of positioning our ship and finding broadsides. Whether or not we do damage is down to some RNG, just the way battleships go. Yeah, that was only 6,500. So some disappointing, some good. But if you get caught out against destroyers or even some cruisers on your own, you're going to die. And you do have to be a little bit careful of that. That's where there's team play elements when it comes to these standard ships. Some of the older ships exhibit much more team play focused elements where they're definitely weak against certain ships, destroyers in this case. Notice how long it's going to take our turrets to turn around to even shoot this guy. He's going to get his torps off point blank and probably take us out. But it's a great example of what this thing can and cannot do. And I think that's great to learn as you're starting to play battleships more. Maybe you've played a lot of battleships already and you've never gone for the North Carolina or the Montana line. I still think they're worth going for. I'm a little bit biased there, playing Montana in all those Kings of the Sea back in the day. I do have a bit of a soft spot for this line, but still, I do think it's a very solid one to go for, allowing you to play even closer range brawling action with this thing and not being out of your element too much. Certainly Massachusetts, other ships at your tier, even tech tree ships like Bismarck or the Vladivostok are a little tankier at close range, or maybe have secondaries to help deal with close range targets. But North Carolina guns are still no joke. Speaking of Vladivostok, little larger citadel. So when he's broadside like this, when we catch them, yes, it's gonna be good damage. Or so we thought. Still a citadel. Still a citadel. But yeah, a little bit of a shotgun there. Maybe that is less to do with the ship's dispersion, might be more to do with an aim bug, perhaps, where it shows we had lock on, but maybe we didn't actually on the back end. It's hard to know, though, these days, but that was really odd dispersion out of a North Carolina. It should be better than that. But let's talk about some of the other characteristics. Something that makes this ship special, at least at tier 8, allowing it to get a little bit closer, is some of your armor profile. It's got 32 most places, sure, but compared to some ships like the French battleships, for example, or the British battleships that have 32 millimeters everywhere on their ship, your deck armor is actually pretty solid. You actually have 38 millimeters of deck armor, allowing you to shatter a lot more HE, as well as auto bounce some higher tier battleship calibers, like the ones that overmatch 32 millimeters of armor, which we will fight a little bit later on. I got a tier 10 game to show you how to play a little more passive than we are right now. It's certainly fun to push in and play like this at closer ranges, but you can't always do that. And it's important to recognize situations where you can and where you can't. This one's a little awkward, but two North Carolinas together have just enough AA to deal with a Lexington striking us, just barely. It's not going to do this well on your own. You certainly do need to clump up a little bit for the anti-aircraft. But more about this ship. You have solid HP pool for your tier. Not the best, certainly, but 66,000 base. I am using the flag here. Does give you some very nice HP to tank for quite a while. And more importantly, we have some of the best healing and damage controls at our tier. I really, really like them. Your detection is also great. Not quite best in the tier, but very, very solid. 27.5 knots is excellent too. One of the worst parts about grinding for the North Carolina that you get to skip just by getting this ship is getting through New Mexico and Colorado, especially at tier 7. They go so slow. North Carolina is that breath of fresh air, allowing you to get up to 27.5 knots instead of like 20. It's really, really a big difference, and you get to go here straight away. 760 meter turning radius means it's relatively nimble. Even though the rudder shift isn't particularly quick, it's relatively nimble, allowing you to maneuver around torpedoes, dodge incoming fire if it's longer ranges, and generally position your ship and angle your ship quite well. You do have to do that though, because this ship does have a waterline citadel, so it is at risk of taking citadel damage. As we saw in the first clips there against those two North Carolinas, we're able to do some pretty good damage. And your citadel repair is only 10%. So when you take normal pen damage, that's when someone gets a full pen on your ship or hits with HE on your ship and does damage, you can only heal back 50% of that, which is still quite good, but still, 50% of that damage sticks. When you're taking citadel damage, or even a lot of torpedo damage functions this way, especially when you take it on the belt, you can only heal back 10%. So 90% of that damage sticks, and that way you can't use this excellent heal. So in this build, I get up to 5 heals, and the big thing here is a standard heal heals you for 14% of your HP if you have that available to heal. You don't always have it. That's kind of that lighter gray section of the HP bar when you're not using your heal. It kind of tells you how much you'll be able to heal back. North Carolina, though, gets 18.5% back per heal. So these are beefier heals. Not a super heal. Monarch, for example, gets you up to 40%. That's a super heal. This is just an improved heal, and it's very nice. No, it doesn't have the fast cooldown like a Massachusetts would, the 40 seconds, still the full 80 seconds, but it does heal you back much more. So in longer duration games, it is a little bit better. Again, a little bit trolled on that Pommern. Don't you worry, you probably recognize this game from that first clip. We're going to get some good damage yet, but I do want to include some of the trolling salvos. I don't want you to go in expecting this ship to always dev strike whatever's in front of you. It can troll with this dispersion. It's not always going to be perfect. The other thing is this damage control. 20 seconds of immunity time is excellent. And by that, I mean when you use it, you repair all the fire and flooding on your ship. It's great. But then for 20 seconds, your damage control is still active. And that means no one can light you on fire or flood you during that time. It does mean it takes longer to get back to another activation of your damage control, but it's really nice in a lot of scenarios when you're getting focused or you're almost behind an island or you're about to go dark to use your damage control and have that immunity time where nobody can light you on fire or flood you again. It's really useful. I like this American damage control quite a bit. And yes, I got to show it to you again because that's just beautiful. That's what we like to see. He gets a good chunk into us in return. We're actually very fortunate to not eat citadels there. Notice how much I can heal back. That's really what it comes down to, is we did not take citadels there. Quite lucky. Certainly, we are at risk of taking citadels there. And really, there's not much else to say other than probably should be shooting AP most. Sure, the HE shells do okay damage at 5,700 and have a 36% fire chance. That's fine, but real strength of North Carolina lies in its armor piercing. Even into tier 10, I think the AP is really solid to keep going for. It's slow, it's hard to aim, but when it hits on a target, typically you're going to get quite good damage. In this case here, sure, we overmatch the Colbert, but into a Schlieffen, an angled Schlieffen, we don't have a lot of overmatch. You're going to see some okay damage there as well. So into superstructures, you're going to find great opportunities with this armor piercing. So I almost never am really using this HE unless there's a destroyer at close range that I can hit in its hull. Yeah, not the best dispersion there. Still good damage, still some good damage into a Colbert, but notice how passive I'm playing this flank, right? We're just staying with our team, not taking the initiative, waiting for the enemies to make mistakes, and punishing them for it. It's really not about you taking the focus, you taking the fight to the enemy. It's annoying if you want to play that more aggressive play style, but it is how you have to play when you're down tiered like this. When you're the bottom tier, it's hard. It's really, really difficult. So either you need to let your higher tiers take the initiative, or you need to play in areas that allow you to punish enemies for making a mistake when they're trying to take an initiative. So incomparable in the cap here, he's broadside. I guess I missed that first one, but our next salvo should do some relatively good damage. That turning circle radius he wasn't expecting, so we turn a lot quicker than a lot of tier 10 battleships are used to when we're playing in North Carolina, so we can avoid some of that incoming fire. Decent damage as well there on the incomp, and he has guns that will overmatch 32 millimeters of armor, so we got to be careful of that. But again, that deck armor is certainly going to help us out. There is no special improved pen angles here on these guns, yet you're gonna feel like it has slightly improved pen angles just because of the shell velocity. They come in at a very different angle than we'll often see, and because they're so slow, they can sometimes stick into targets and explode the shell, detonate the shell, where other ships with better shell velocity, where it's easier to aim maybe, the shells are so fast they'll just pass right through the ship more often. Where NC with its slow shells has a small advantage there. It does mean it's harder to aim, certainly, but having that ability to get a few more full pens just because your shells are so slow is quite nice. We're staying angled to the North Carolina, and now that the enemy team has taken some hits, and this North Carolina should go down, certainly will since he's angling to me. He's not angling to our Shikishima. Certainly, I would have preferred he angled to the Shikishima so I could have that funny broadside shot. But still, a great example of positioning in such a way that it forces enemy ships to decide, are they going to angle to you? Well, they're probably going to be broadside to your teammate. That's a great way to play this thing. And try and play it around your concealment range. Don't be pushing in too hard, at least not at the start. Notice we're 10 minutes or so into this match, and it's time where I can start to use this HP pool and take advantage of the enemy team's positioning. Certainly they don't have much left over here, but we're losing a lot of HP pretty quick. These tier 10s are no joke. Schlieffen with its secondaries bullpenning us in a lot of ways as well. And double Citadel though on that first salvo. A little less damage on the second, but still enough for our teammates to help us out and take out the Schlieffen. I didn't throw away my HP at the start, and now I'm using it to trade a little bit to get better map positioning here. If I had gone in, I mean, there's that overmatch for you. If I had gone in early, I do think I would have lost a lot more HP and died. In fact, our other North Carolina did die on that same flank. He got caught more out in the open. You can see that on the 10 line there, G10 on the map there. So you got to be a little bit careful, but tier 8, you still have enough HP and certainly the firepower to take a fight to a tier 10 ship. You just got to time it correctly. And that's why I like North Carolina still. I had some frustrating games still with dispersion and stuff, and certainly getting up tiered into tier 10. Tier 10 carriers are really tough to deal with, especially with how much we're reliant on our concealment to not only not take damage, but get damage. We need to be surprising people. We need to be pushing up to use our guns and not be sitting at 20 kilometers. It's very difficult to lead your guns at 20 kilometers. It's doable, but certainly not preferred. And the other element of shooting these guns, even at mid-range, is that you're gonna have to start to learn how to predict people because the shells are so slow. This Lexington, I thought, was going to accelerate a little bit quicker, so you're gonna notice these shells land too far forward on his ship. We still get okay damage, but no citadels, which is a little disappointing, but I should have aimed a little further back, right? And it's all about predicting the target when it comes to battleships at longer ranges. And for North Carolina, it's even at closer ranges. But it's a really good skill to have, as you need to be good at predicting what an enemy will do, as there's some very maneuverable cruisers, and let's be honest, battleships are very maneuverable these days. If you're playing the more modern ones, some of the gimmicks include basically cruiser level maneuverability. So if you're trying to hit people at those longer ranges, I mean, look at how far we have to lead this Otago at 18 kilometers. It's like, what, 15 seconds? Sorry, 12 seconds? That's a lot of time for him to shift his rudder and slow down. Fortunately, he doesn't, so the shells hit pretty hard still. But that's a lot of time for those shells to hang up in the air. And for good players, people that have been playing a while, at cruisers especially, they'll be looking for your shells and they'll just dodge them. So learning how to predict is also a skill set with North Carolina. It's hard though. So it does mean this ship will teach you a lot, but it also means that the ship will be hard to play until you learn some of these strategies and how you need to play a battleship these days. So the last thing we should probably talk about has to do with building this ship, its modules, its commander. Certainly, these American battleships aren't too demanding, especially the standard ones on the commander. You can get by with even 10 points on these ships. Of course, they like more, but we'll look at some ships later on that are available in this free gift, this update, that are much more point reliant on their commander build. So it's nice to see a North Carolina available here. where you're not really punished for having a lower tier commander, a lower level commander. I like that a lot about this ship. I am running fully built up commanders. Again, I'm being a little greedy with these super heavy AP shells. But starting off with Emergency Repair Specialist, Grease the Gears, Adrenaline Rush, and Concealment, you'll have a great ship and the ability to do 90-95% of what I was doing in these games with that build. Fire Prevention would be a great next choice. Again, these heals heal for so much that getting that 5th heal often isn't as worthwhile, just because you get so much HP back from the 4 standard. So once you get to 14 points, which isn't too bad of playing this ship, you can take Fire Prevention, and then you're basically covered. The rest of them, you can throw in almost anything you want to. The 5th heal is nice for certain matches, and I'm getting greedy with super heavy AP. Certainly going for something like basic survivability could be a much, much better play. And since our Concealment's so good, Brisk is a good option just to get around the map that little bit quicker. As for the upgrades here, Concealment, of course, 12.3 Detect. We've talked about that a lot this video, but it really is quite important to be buffing that as much as we can. Not only is that best for our damage output, it's also best for our survivability. I'm using Propulsion Mod because I value that extra bit of maneuverability. We have such good turning circle radius here, and the ability to slow down, turn in, speed up, turn out, all these things is really nice for dodging incoming fire, especially at longer ranges. So I value that more than damage control, especially because, again, these heals heal for a lot. So a little fire burning on our ship for a bit longer isn't as big a deal because fires are 100% healable. Citadel damage only heal back 10%. Regular pen damage, you heal 50%. Fires, you heal back literally the whole thing. So you can afford to leave one burn for a little bit longer. That's where you want fire prevention, though. You don't want 2, 3, or 4. That's where you got to be careful. But 1 is not great, but it is fine to deal with, certainly. Main armaments, as well as damage control system, these aren't as important. I have run builds where I run damage control party mod 1, which means this immunity time we were talking about gets upwards of 30 seconds. 30 seconds, you hit this button and you're just immune to fires for that amount of time. It's kind of funny. You do have to play around it a little bit more because, again, you're still waiting that 73 with this build or even 80 seconds with a standard build without some of the flags to actually get back to your damage control, which means fires can tick for a long time. And I personally like running range mod. I'm not going to get too hard into the details here, but some people data mined the dispersion characteristics of ships in this game quite a while ago now. And they found that range does give you a slight benefit to your accuracy. Very slight. Having more maximum gun range does help you all the way through. It's very minor, so don't feel like you have to. Honestly, in a lot of those games, it would have been nice to have turret traverse, and in some of them I did. I did have the turret traverse upgrade, so I think that's probably just better. But just so you know, that's why I have it. And that's why you might see me pop a spotter plane as well to get better. Like, it's minuscule. It's like tiny amounts of percentages better. It's really almost not worth bringing up. But if you're wondering why would I use a spotter plane at such close range, that is why. It's these minor optimizations. And then the game, I roll a 0 or a 1, and it's a shotgun dispersion anyway. Maybe I'm looking too hard into it to try and optimize, and then I'm getting punished for that. But that 38 mil deck armor, look at that. So angled bow in like this, you can get farmed down, certainly, but it's pretty tanky ship still. It's no joke. Certainly a lot of ships have more 32 on the deck armor as well, and that's going to die a lot quicker to HE, as well as in some of those up tiers, incomparable. Yamato, for example, has 32 millimeters of overmatch, so we got to be a bit careful there. The other thing is, this is not your full Citadel here. It's only this stuff at the waterline. So yes, you can take Citadels, but I don't like this game design personally, but it is harder to Citadel this ship just because its Citadel is at the waterline. I don't like that design. I've been saying that for a long time. I would prefer this whole red box was the Citadel. And then for all ships, I wish all ships would take more consistent damage to their broadside and less overmatch damage. That's my wish for this game. It's not going to happen. But that's what I wish. I think that is more fun for me personally. So NC, a great option for you if you're newer to the game, newer to battleships. This is an excellent choice. Also, if you've never ground out towards the Montana, specifically because you've been trying to avoid that the Colorado and New Mexico grind, I don't blame you. This is a great way to get through to that North Carolina. Skip the hard part, skip the annoying part, and get into the good tier 8, tier 9, and tier 10 ships that are North Carolina, Iowa, and Montana. Although that said, you cannot get this ship if you completed enough of the missions in the past couple of months. So if you got enough to get the tier 10, congrats, but you can't suddenly choose the tier 8 now. We'll go over the tier 10s as well as the other tier 8s in future videos. But for now, that's going to do it for the North Carolina. Thank you very much for watching and have a great rest of your day.